was such a crazy moment. I was at Nasser Hospital, Khan Yunis, and the Israeli military had begun to surround the hospital. The nurses were showing me where the tanks were right outside. You could see them. And there was so much shelling. It was nonstop. We could not sleep at all at night. We were so concerned about how bad it was that we were like putting mattresses on the windows because we thought shrapnel would fly through and kill us. On a truck, just a couple of miles away is everything that you need to do your job. My name is Ahmad. I'm a Palestinian American born and raised in Chicago, an emergency medicine physician on the south side of Chicago, and a board member for the Palestinian American Medical Association. I mean, for me, the first moments of really kind of feeling Palestinian are related to the first time I was able to visit. You know, my family's from a suburb of Jerusalem, and I went when I was 4 years old, and it was during the time of the first Intifada. And so it was just a really tumultuous time, but, you know, I was able to meet my grandparents, my cousins, my uncles, and these are the earliest memories I have of just even my earliest memories of consciousness. And so I knew there was a difference. There was a difference between where I was and when I came back. And I think, again, one of the earliest memories I have is of my cousin Essam, who was 17 years old, who was killed when I was there, when I was visiting. Essam's father was serving a life sentence in Israeli prison. And Essam was protesting, demonstrating for better prisoner conditions. And in the process, he was gunned down and he died. And I remember his father had been released from prison to be able to bury his son for 24 hours. And I still remember when he was released, I remember being at the hospital, not fully understanding what was happening, but just knowing that this was something really important that was happening here. And, those are the things that I think about when I think about what it means growing up as a Palestinian, as an American. I think about that. I think about the olive trees in my grandfather's yard. I think about, the animals that were around. I think about Masjid al-Aqsa, the Dome of the Rock. These are images that are just ingrained in my mind that you can't ever forget. And I think that's really kind of helped shape who I am and how I've understood what it means to be Palestinian. It's important to be clear about this because I am American, but I'm also Palestinian. I am both of those things at the same time, even when those things seem to contradict each other. When it's hard, there are these things that are pulling you in different directions. But when I go to Palestine, for example, they can tell that I'm an American. And when I'm here in the States, people know that I'm Palestinian or that I'm not, exactly, just an American. And you see it. I mean, you see it spill into the workplace, right? Like, part of who I am and my identity as a Palestinian makes me want to use what I do for a living to be able to help my people. I want to be able to come back home whenever I can and start serving my communities that are there, as well as serving my community here. And it's not easy to do that. Sometimes there's a significant amount of backlash. There are plenty of physicians, Palestinian, and I would say people who are very much empathetic with what's happening in Palestine now, who are struggling to do that in the healthcare space, who have suffered really tough consequences as a result of that. They've lost their jobs, they've been suspended, all because that overlap that they were trying to connect of, doctors here in the United States versus doctors in Palestine. They kind of uphold the same values. They want to treat patients. They want to advocate for them, all because that connection was deliberately sort of pushed away and denied. So it's been hard. I mean, it's been very hard. It's hard to navigate. I mean, it's hard to be at a very busy trauma center with all of the resources and then go to a very busy trauma center with none of the resources and seeing the differences that take place.
Yeah.
You sit there and you're like, all because somebody was born somewhere else, that they're suddenly deprived of that chance at life, that they're not going to get the same standard of care that they would get if they had just, randomly been born in Cook County. And so, I struggle with it. I think about that all the time. It has gotten exponentially worse. The situation on the ground has gotten worse. And when we were there, we were not, it wasn't very good either. There were moments where you were like, I just need this this tool, I need these supplies, I need these gloves, and we would be able to make a difference, or maybe this kid could survive. And now it's exponentially worsened. I mean, I talk to both my Palestinian colleagues on the ground, the doctors and the nurses that are there, and I also talk to the medics that are allowed to enter. People like Dr. Nick Maynard, Graham, all of these different surgeons that have just recently come out. It's, to me, it's so devastating. It's devastating to think that there's somebody who's lying on the floor, and in Arabic, in Gaza, they'll say something like, لسه فيه نفس. There's still, في نفس, there's still breaths. And what they're saying is they're still seeing this person still breathing. And I don't think any of us as healthcare workers have been in those moments where there's so many people who are in those last moments of life, and with each breath, their soul is leaving their body. Whereas here in the United States, you're allowed to be more aggressive in trying to save that person and trying to give them a chance to recover. And they don't get that chance at Gaza. Yeah, that's what bothers me. And that's what bothers my colleagues when I talk to them. They feel this, there's a word called like ajiz in Arabic. And I find when they tell it to me, the way I translate it actually is more of like this feeling of, I want to do something, but there's this paralysis that I can't. And the paralysis is all these external factors.
Oh,
and they know, they know just as much as we know that on a truck, just a couple of miles away is everything that you need to do your job. And I think that's one thing that's not talked about when it comes to doctors and nurses in Gaza is the high standard that they hold themselves to. Yes, they're incredibly talented and they're brilliant. They're just so good at their job. They're so smart. And they're so thirsty to learn more and to become better, to professionally develop. But there's other things that people don't mention. It's how they try to preserve the dignity of their patients.
oh,
We don't have that same sort of standards here in the United States. It's important, but it's not to the emphasis that they have, right? The ethics that they think about, the conversations that they have when it comes to some of the ethical problems that every doctor or nurse may encounter. There's much more empathy. There's much more putting themselves in the shoes of the person that's in front of them. Gaza has problems, Palestine has problems just like any other country in the world. Different public health problems, even there's substance abuse, right? But the way they talk about that, the way they refer to that person, it's really, really incredible to see, because this is a group of people, Palestinians, who have been dehumanized by the rest of the world. Any chance you can to rip them of humanity, it's taken by, the major news outlets or by politicians.
yeah.
But for them, it's crazy how they center humanity in their conversations. I'm talking about doctors and nurses where it's very easy to fall into the science.
Yeah.
It's very easy to disregard human. That doesn't happen there. They think about, I want to, somebody cares about modesty. I want to keep them covered. Yes, somebody's on the floor, but they're elderly. So if something opens up, I want to get them a chair. I want to get them a table.
Right.
If it's busy at the hospital, I will have to admit, I'm not proud of this, but that kind of stuff takes a back seat for me.
Yeah.
And that's not the case there. It's not the case to a place that's seeing their hospitals overrun with patients and displaced people. That's something that, I think is really, it just gives you an idea of who these people are, especially when there's such an active effort to dehumanize them and make them seem, that they're like nefarious characters, right? This is something that I like to actually point out. And there's a good documentary that I would recommend to folks. It's called From Ground Zero. And From Ground Zero has 21 different perspectives of Palestinians on the ground in Gaza. And they're all different. They're all very different people. They're different stories. Palestinians, the culture that's there, that exists, I think is what contributes to that sort of perseverance and the emphasis on human beings and dignity and love. And even if, I believe this, and maybe I'm biased because of house, but even if they weren't under occupation, even if the circumstances weren't as they were, I still believe that would be a part of who they are, the fabric. And faith is so important. I'm going to say this because to me, it's just, I don't know, it was just such a crazy moment. I was at Nasser Hospital, Khan Yunis, and the Israeli military had begun to surround the hospital. And the nurses were showing me where the tanks were right outside. You could see them. and there was so much shelling. It was nonstop. We could not sleep at all at night. We were so concerned about just how bad it was that we were like putting mattresses on the windows because we thought shrapnel would fly through and kill us. And at, I can't remember, I think 3 or 4 a.m., there's a masjid, there's a mosque right near the hospital. And the mu'adhin, the person who calls prayer, got up there and made the call to prayer as this is happening surrounding them. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, as somebody in that moment, you just kind of hear that and you're like, whoa, it really, really takes you back. I mean, I was stunned by that. But, that's, again, they are like people who have very strong faith. They are people who, obviously, the sense of community is very important, family-oriented society, and all those things are at play there. I just think it's a part of their genetics, man. I've been to Gaza multiple times since 2009. So some people will remember that Operation Cast Lead happened in 2008, 2009. Obama had just won his first election. And in that interim period where Bush is leaving office and Obama's coming into office, Operation Cast Lead takes place. Over 1,000 people are killed, 300 kids are killed. And I remember going there, and for me, I think and I will always say this to all of my colleagues who go and volunteer, all of my international colleagues. So anybody from the UK or Europe or the United States or Canada, it blows my mind that they're willing to go to Palestine, to go to Gaza, to go, after October 7th. I don't know why they would even risk what they're risking to go there. But for me, it's this tremendous sense of guilt that I'm enjoying all of the privileges that I get to enjoy in the United States, and I see them, and you just can't shake that feeling of, gosh, he looks like me, he talks like me, he's got daughters just like my daughters, and that family looks like my family, and they love this dish as much as I love that dish, and even like some of the mannerisms, I can't shake that. And so for me, when you go there, you feel like you have to go there. And when you cross in and you finally get there, you get to this, the land feels so sacred because you're so actively being prevented from entering too. It's crazy. I mean, like my grandfathers, I'm not sure if one of them, but I know my grandfather never had a chance to go to Gaza, being born in Jerusalem. Never had a chance to visit us. And none of my, the majority of my family members who live in the West Bank and Jerusalem have never been to Gaza. So that's really hard to do. So getting there just feels like you're finally there. It's like, wow, I'm here. These are my people. And it's like, I can't believe we're so close, but so far away. At least that's that feeling. And so you're like, whatever I have that I was able to enjoy through the privileges that I've been afforded and the blessings that I get to enjoy, I want to try to share as much of that as possible. Is it me being a doctor? I'm happy to go and work with them. I'm happy to stand next to another ER doctor that's working in Gaza and ask him, hey, do you need the newest book that's come out, or do you need subscription to this service, or what can I do? Or like, how can I be a resource? So it's a desperate feeling like, use me. What, how can I help? And you just feel like the time is like not enough. You just feel like it's being ripped away from you. Like you're there, and every day you're like, how did 24 hours just pass? And like, you feel like you just don't have enough time. I mean, so it's a bizarre feeling. It's not really like, I'm not thinking about it from a physician or humanitarian perspective. It's more like, I've only got this limited time with my family. I've only got this limited time with these people here. And that spills over into how you're talking to patients. I don't need a translator to sit and talk to this kid who maybe has a shrapnel injury. So maybe I'm, just taking more time talking to them, and then, some of the folks are getting frustrated with me because I'm taking too long. But that's how it spills over into how you're sort of trying to practice. And like, this is kind of weird to say, but you also are like, you want to leave as much of yourself there as possible, even if it's the clothes. Right? I remember I have two buddies there. They're younger than me. But I remember I'm leaving. I'm like, look, my socks are dirty, but I just want to leave them with you so you remember me. And they thankfully they understood and didn't get offended, right? Like, you're leaving your dirty socks with us. But that's like, I just want to leave a piece of me there, And so it's weird. It's a bizarre feeling. It's really bizarre. Because you get there, and as a Palestinian, you're like, this is Palestine. I know all of the, I know the jokes, I know the sarcasm. Yes, I, share the same desires. But it's just it's so off limits. It's so restricted. It's the hardest place in the world to get to. And it's even harder if you're Palestinian. So, and I'll say this, and I want to mention them because it's important to mention. But the other people in the diaspora whose families are still in Gaza, them being denied, I can't even imagine what they're going through. There's guys here in the United States, Muhammad Subuh, being denied even though he's from Gaza, and this is somebody who had to be a refugee. So kind of being displaced, not being allowed back in. Muhammad Mustafa, the beast from the Middle East, same thing. Families from Gaza being denied from entering. And these are both people who were able to at least also go once during the genocide. And so, people, Ali, I want to mention Ali too, because again, it's crazy to me. Ali was born in Gaza. This is now an orthopedic surgeon, Yale trained, and was born in Gaza, went to an UNRWA school in Gaza. Right? So he comes over here. He was able to go back once, operate, and then now he's being denied. It's not just that it's arbitrary, or I don't think it's arbitrary, but there's a cruelness there. It's just, so, I feel it as a Palestinian, but my family is not in Gaza right now. I mean, maybe they were there 100 or 150 years ago, but these guys, they've got folks there. I mean, their DNA is in the soil. So, it's really frustrating. I try not to get too angry and try to, make it into like, okay, how do we get back in? How do we, channel our energy that way? But sometimes you just sit back and you're like, man. And I don't mean it to, don't want to sound bitter about other people getting in, but to be honest, it's just, I'm so thankful and I'm happy that other folks get in and they're able to help. But there's a pain, man. There's a wound that's kind of like you're spraying salt on it when these people are being rejected and then these folks are getting in. You're like, man, this makes no sense. It just makes no sense. That's a really, really important thing to think about. Like, what does it mean to stand in solidarity? And to me, it's not just about, supporting or statements of support or kind of like, or acknowledgements. I don't think that's solidarity. That is important. And I think that's a reflection of, a principled approach and moral consistency. I think that's when you're condemning something or you're releasing a statement or you're shining light on something. Solidarity is, and this is again my opinion, I'm not an expert on it, but this is how I understand it. Right now, we see an active effort to undermine Palestinians and Palestinian institutions. There's an effort to erase them, to get rid of anything that is Palestinian. There's an effort to disrupt the education of our children or the development of our professionals, to erase our museums, to blow up our hospitals, to shut down our schools. Solidarity is actively standing in the face of that and trying to stop it, while also trying to maintain and preserve these institutions, to help build them up. How can you serve as a resource for Palestinians with what they're facing right now? That's standing in solidarity when you're actively doing that. When you're sitting there saying, this is, they're trying to ban, this idea of being Palestinian, or they're trying to erase that. How do you stand in front of that, prevent it from happening, while also fortifying what it means to be a Palestinian and supporting the institutions of Palestinians? And so, that's, to me, that's what solidarity is. How you do that for everybody is going to be different. That's another thing I want to comment on also. I think people, and this can get lost in the sauce a little bit, but solidarity doesn't have one lane. It doesn't have one sort of way, the only one right way to do things. Everybody is going to be able to stand in solidarity and support in their own way. And, that's, on each individual and personal level, you ask yourself, what can I do and how do I maximize what I can do, if you care enough? But I also don't think that that solidarity is something that should be treated as this sort of like exclusive kind of club, this group, where you're sort of like pushing people out because it can only be this one approach. So I think we have to be very careful about making sure that we're inclusive, making sure that we understand that we think solidarity is a natural step after somebody is able to at least become familiar with what's happening. They're able to fight against the dehumanization and really see them for the humans that they are. Solidarity is natural as a result. I think for all of us, after October 7th, as we saw things sort of unfold in Gaza, it's changed all of us, whether people have been on the ground or not. It's sort of changed so much of who we are. Yeah. There's always these moments in your life when you remember them as pivotal moments, right? Like it could be a person that you love very deeply. If they pass away, you remember before they passed away and after they passed away. And this is one of those things, before what happened in Gaza, before the genocide, after the genocide, right? And that's how pivotal of a moment it is. Coming back, I think one thing that has frustrated me, and I've been so wrong and disappointed about this. I was dead wrong. And I think my friends can attest to this. I didn't think we'd get to this point. I did not think we would get to 22 months. I did not think that we would, it wouldn't have stopped already. And I am disillusioned with, for example, the mainstream media. They're always like, we want to look for somebody who's just come out of Gaza, who's just come back. And you're like, how many more doctors, aid workers, and nurses have to tell you that this is hell on earth? Have to tell you that this is so devastating? And it's just, for me, it's like, it's almost this very weird, like checking a box off, right? Like, okay, we have to talk 3 minutes about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And you don't get anywhere deeper than that. And that's what's bothered me the most. We have not had a deeper conversation, a more nuanced conversation, to talk about what's going on. And I feel like if we had done that, there's no way we would be at the point that we are. If we just took a chance to actually think about what's happening instead of, it's one crisis after another. It's like, polio, there's starvation, there's famine, hospital was bombed, this kid's video went viral, and then move on to the next thing. I mean, that to me really has been soul crushing, absolutely soul crushing. And then to see that there is a deliberate double standard when it comes to Palestinians and when it comes to talking about what's happening there, with professional societies, with political institutions. I mean, we can't get a medical society to consistently release a statement about what's happening. And you're talking, you can't even get them to mention the issues that children are going through. You would think, hey, children's not controversial at all. Can we get somebody to talk about this?
Tell that to Miss Rachel.
Yeah, right, exactly. But that's the example, right? Like, that is the example. Miss Rachel, who my daughters love. God, I'm so happy that she's a good person on the screen and off the screen, But even her, I can't imagine the sort of hate and the vile remarks that she gets because she spoke out about children who were struggling. And they're not just struggling like, this kid broke his leg or something. We're talking about the most unimaginable suffering that would break every adult in most of the rooms that we, are in or are sitting in. So to see that there isn't some sort of, there isn't moral consistency as some of the institutions that are supposed to represent these principled societies. Man, where are we? Like, what are we doing here? Why are we all, this is a charade. It's all performative theatrics, right? The American Medical Association, you really are not at the forefront talking about some of the stuff that's going on there? That's crazy to me, right? It's just absolutely nuts. Or our politicians here, it's like, they are tiptoeing around. And if they somehow even try to mention Palestine or Palestinians, they cannot separate it from also just all of these other talking points and propaganda. They have to combine them together. We can never be our own humans. Like, no matter any acknowledgement of us, has to be met with technical arguments of somebody else. So that's a really tough, it's, for me, that's been really tough. I think a lot of us share that, not just Palestinians. I think anybody Muslim in this country has felt like, what's going on here? Anybody that's, comes from an immigrant background, or, they come from the global South, everybody's come to a realization like, man, I think our institutions are led by a ton of hypocrites here. And there is no red line for getting somebody to speak up or do the right thing. There's no red line. And because Gaza was the litmus test, what red line has not been crossed in Gaza? Yeah.
And I think this is a reminder for myself, first and foremost, is like, what did I do?
Yeah.
When you had the opportunity to do something, to stand up for something, did you?
I mean, that's the mindset that I think, that's how my mindset has transformed. It used to be, how do we change what's going on? And how do we kind of, this sort of almost delusions of grandeur of thinking like, if all of us come together, we can make a difference and people will listen. Now it's like, I just want to make sure that I am doing, like I can at least look at myself in the mirror and I'd be able to tell my daughters 20 years from now, God willing, that, oh, by the way, when this was going on, your dad was actually trying to do this. Like, he tried to step up, he tried to say the truth, because it's sad to say that, and that's where we're at now. Because, and there was that book that, basically saying like, at one point in the future, everyone will have been against this, right? Like, that's the idea. Is like, and, I think for me now, it's just like wanting to make sure that I actually was against it, and it sucks because I think if you had asked me that question a year and a half ago, I probably would have been like, yeah, we can do this. We can change it. All of us get together and we can move and we can make some things happen. Now it's like, be honest with yourself and make sure that you're doing everything that you can do on an individual level, because you're not going to be able to control the people around you or the spaces that are around you. But that's another way that Gaza, I think, has changed a lot of us.
It really has. Honestly, it really has.
It's hard. I mean, you have to acknowledge that we were not sort of built to see some of the things that we're seeing, and you're seeing it every day, day after day, and it really has a devastating effect on you. I mean, I'd have to say, you're not who you were, right? It's not normal, despite how often people try to rationalize it or they'll try to normalize it, right? But I think a couple of things keep me grounded. First and foremost, there's this notion that, this too shall pass. But this is, I think, the worst thing I've ever seen, the worst I've ever felt. Just sort of the worst things that humans can do to one another. Mankind has really gotten to the bottom of the barrel here, right? Where we've reached rock bottom. And I think knowing that this will pass is something that will keep us grounded. I talked to somebody a week ago when the hunger was really devastating. And he said, we know this is going to be over at some point. We're on the phone. He said, inshallah, this is going to be over at some point. We will get through this. We will get past it. And talking to a lot of my colleagues in Gaza, the Palestinians on the ground, they're the ones who actually keep me grounded. When I feel like I'm going nuts, them leaving voice notes on WhatsApp, hearing the drones in the background, you're like, all right, I got to pick myself up here. I got to move forward. Like, there's a chance that they're not going to have a piece of bread all day today. And they're still showing up to work. They're still moving forward. I have to move forward. And then the other part of this is understanding that no matter how much the world tries to ignore what's happening, how they try to silence it, how they don't want to remember our kids' names, how they sit back and justify what's happening to them, and they're moving at a snail's pace to allow anything in. Just knowing that there is a creator, that God sees all of what's happening, and that at the end of the day, that is the only thing that you can place your trust in and your faith in, that's something that brings you back. If you're depending on the Trump administration or the United Nations or this organization to save you and to help you, you're going to be disappointed. And we've all been disappointed in the last 21 months.
Sweet God.
And so I think understanding from that perspective is something that helps you orient yourself. But it's hard. I mean, it's a challenge and it's a test. I mean, for me, one thing I want them to know is that there are people like me, that there's a whole generation of us that is not going to let a single child not be remembered, not be honored, not a single person that has perished in this conflict at the hands of the Israelis. There's not a single person that we are not going to make sure that we recognize, that we acknowledge, that we confront the people that stood by, that were complicit in what was happening. Not going to let anybody slide with having been quiet when soul of my soul, Ruh was killed, and when his granddaughter was killed a year before that. There's not a single human who we are not going to confront them with what happened to Hind Rajab and say, what did you do when that happened? Did you mourn her loss like you should have, like the entire world should have? And if you didn't, why not? If you had even the tiniest bit of authority, the tiniest bit of power, the tiniest bit of wealth, that there's a group of us who the people of Gaza have changed, that the rest of our lives is going to be dedicated to making sure that we don't forget what happened. There can be mass graves and there can be children who have disappeared, and there are hospitals that no longer stand and museums that have been flattened and universities that have been blown up. But there is an absolute generation, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who are not going to let that slide, who are not going to be quiet about that, who are going to spend the majority of the rest of their lives trying to make it up to them, the people of Gaza, but also to confront the injustices. I'm not going to let people forget about all of the kids that have perished. There's this chart that tells you the most common names of kids that have been killed. And you see names like Layan, you see names like Muhammad, you see all of these names. And I want to honor those names. Obviously, I think there's so many of us who want to make sure that we honor them, that we mourn them like they deserve to be, but also that they need justice. And that I think there's a role for us and that we're not going to take that lightly. So this is an amana from our perspective. We're going to take that on. We have to take that on. It's the least that we can do. And I also say that, we are obviously sorry for everything that we have failed at. All of the times where we weren't able to make a difference, to help, all of the ways that we have failed them and disappointed them. I hope that they can find it in their hearts to forgive us. I hope they can give us a chance to make it up to them. And that we're not going to pretend that we haven't failed them in these moments. So that's something I hope that they could hear from, not just from me, but so many people who feel the same way. There's in Gaza, they always say, matiklakish, don't worry about it. And I hope that I can share that with them. I hope I can tell them that inshallah, once this passes and it's time to kind of think about what the next steps are, what tomorrow looks like, don't worry about that. That's where we have to take care of that. That's on us. That's on us to step up. And inshallah, we're up for that task. I hope so.
Inshallah, once this passes and you are able to go back to Gaza, what will be the first thing you want to do there?
I kind of just want to, for me, the first thing I would want to do is just walk along the side of the road where the beach and the sea is on one side and, the rest of Gaza is on the other side. I would just love to walk the entire length of it with my friends who are there. You know what I mean? Like I felt like when I was there, we were trying so hard to get to the north. We weren't able to get to the north. It's so close. And there's like this, I just want to be there. I just want to kind of take advantage of that opportunity, not take it for granted, and really soak it all in. I just want to catch up with everybody. I just want to sit with them outside. I hope I get that chance again, honestly.
So what does liberation actually look like to you, beyond the slogans and beyond everything that we see?
The opportunity to have a chance at fulfilling, your potential. And I say that from a perspective for a Palestinian. To me, what liberation is they have an opportunity and a chance to fulfill their potential. I saw so many young, physicians who I'm like, wow, these kids are just so smart. I mean, they are so brilliant. And the siege and the blockade and the occupation is getting in the way of this person being able to serve all of humanity. Like, these are the types of people, you don't want them just leading in Gaza. You don't want them just to sort of be leading the healthcare system. You want them to be out in front of the entire world, lecturing the entire world, giving courses to folks. You see that. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I'm medical education is a part of what I do. And you just see it over there. You're like, so many of these folks are gifted and talented, and it goes beyond medicine. It goes beyond healthcare. I mean, whether it's, somebody in the arts, or somebody who's really witty and funny, and and there's, you're just like, man, these personalities, these people, their stories, their backgrounds. They should be able to share their gift with the world. To me, it just boils down to that. They're being prevented from doing that, and all they need is a chance. All they need is that opportunity. And, I don't know. I always think about that. I always think about like the engineers and the architects and, even the fishermen, like even the way that, they would, even their cuisine, all the things that they would do. You're like, wow, this is incredible. That people would absolutely be enamored with the folks there, and it's a very simplistic way to answer that question, but it's because I think sometimes we can get lost in really deep definitions and really long words, and I think you just got to feel it. Like, you go over there, you go into Gaza, and you feel them being trapped, right? You see it when somebody graduates from high school, when somebody is, trying to specialize in medicine or some other field, or somebody like Mu'taz, who has this passion for, being a photographer, right? He should have the chance to go to the different landscapes and the wonders of the world. This doctor should be able to train at Oxford or, Harvard, and then come back and serve his folks if he wants to, and then build his own Harvard in Palestine. And that's the stuff that gets cut off. And to me, that's what's depriving these people of that real sense of liberation and freedom. I'll give you one example too that somebody shared with me. She is a director and producer. And so she was working with some of the cameramen in Gaza getting footage. She told me that there is this cameraman there she's been doing this for 30 years. She said one of the best that she's ever worked with. She said just sort of the intuition, the way that they were moving, the way they were capturing the moments, the way that they were, just the footage that she was getting, everything from the quality of it to how the content was filmed. She was so impressed with it. And you're like, there's a real chance that person, because of him capturing that footage, that he could be killed if we don't put a stop to this. Right? Like, high risk of that. First is to all of the young folks in the diaspora, the stuff that they've been able to do has made it into the tents in Gaza. People actually looking at that and finding a sense of just being happy with that. Like, their messages, them being so moved by it. I mean, these are people in Gaza going through what they're going through, struggling to survive, seeing what some of the young folks have done that for the last 70 plus years we have not been able to do. And we've been in We've been in the United States for a very long time. We've been everywhere, and they've been able to make gains that we have not been able to. So despite some of the frustrations, despite some of the setbacks, despite the targeted attacks and the efforts to dox and to suspend and expel, and there has been tremendous amount of movement, and a lot of credit goes to them. That's the first thing I'll say. And the second thing, as an old person now, is don't make the mistakes that we made. Don't make the mistakes that we made. And some of the things that we did is we got caught up and lost in I would say identity politics almost, right? Like just this idea of, boxing certain people out, gatekeeping, really trying to own spaces and circles, and not realizing the importance of collaboration, of coalitions, of organizing, of making sure that things are, rooted in grassroots. Don't make that mistake because, I think we have a lot of responsibility for how things have transpired over the last 22 months, because of the mistakes that we made. And I see just more potential. I see more talent. I see, more success. So it's dark. It's very, very dark right now. Really tough times. But just know, as somebody who has seen how things were before, I see that they're one of the avenues where I actually see hope. And I think a lot of people are seeing how powerful they can be. Not to forget that, that's, just remember that in those moments where you feel like everything is going against you, or things are not going well. Yeah, I mean, we're talking, I'll say this, you can just see it. The way that we are talking about Palestine, Palestinians, the way we are talking about Gaza is nothing that I've ever seen before. I've never seen the conversation moved in this direction. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. And there's still mistakes, and there's still racism and discrimination, and there's still dehumanization. But it's not like how it was before. And that I can attest to. Somebody who's seen it. Palestine is being spoken in circles. It's making such a difference. And I have hope as a result of that. When you have the powers of the government being used to silence people, that tells you how strong that voice was, how powerful that voice was. The fact that the wheels of government are trying to shut it down, and not just shut it down in like a, discouraging way. They're talking about, like, you see what's happening to Columbia and to Harvard and to the students and to visa holders and to Mahmoud Khalil and Muhsin and I'm forgetting the name of the young Turkish girl who wrote the op-ed. I mean, to me, it tells you just how powerful what they were doing was, and the fact that these people's voices were reaching heights that we have not seen before. So yeah, I mean, it does give me hope. One thing I wish I could communicate, and the truth is, a Palestinian from Gaza would be much better at this than me, but they are built different. Palestinians are built different, and I don't mean that in a way to sort of kind of like give you this false image of like superheroes. No, they're human beings. They are struggling, and they're dealing with hunger, and they're hurt, and they're pain. But they are, there's just something special about who they are as people. And it's something, the best way I can explain it is, if you were to get a text message from somebody like when you get a message from somebody in Gaza, you want to spend time with them. Like, let's say we're able to move past this war, and you get a chance to spend some time with somebody from Gaza. It's one of those moments where you don't want the night to end. You don't want the conversation to stop. And there's just that sincerity, authenticity that they have, the hospitality and the generosity. It's this incredible mix that there's this, special person in front of you. And it's not, there's special people everywhere. But I think in Palestine, it's sort of this, it's almost like the norm when you're running into some of these people and you're just kind of able to interact with them. And so I hope for everybody that they get a chance to meet more of them, to sit with them, to talk with them. And, and it's not just about the oppression that's taking place and how bad things have gotten, but it's also just about who they are as human beings and wanting to kind of give them that sort of respect that they deserve almost. Like it's really tough to put it into words. And I think the only way to kind of communicate that message is to have people experience it. So that's what I hope. I hope people can visit and experience. I hope they can go to Jerusalem, they can go to the Old City. I hope that they can go to Bethlehem, Beit Lahem, that they can go to Nablus, to Jenin, to Gaza, to Khan Yunis, because you will know what I'm talking about. And you will know that there are not many words that can be used to describe, who these people are.